recording just the message. We are continuing to socially distance and conduct our meeting electronically. The meeting will be recorded. The recording will be published and available on the website. So if you choose to participate in the meeting and talk, that is your sign of consent to be recorded and to have that recording broadcast again. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Redevelopment Commission. The other thing is, if you're not speaking, if you could mute your microphone, please. And then the May 18th meeting, so we will call it to order at 5 o'clock. Mr. Secretary, would you mind taking roll?
Certainly. Rich West.
Here.
Sally Ricciardi.
Here.
Alda Benedictus. Here. Karen Schumann.
Here.
Sue McInturf.
Here.
McInturf. Sorry, Sue McInturf. And Tom Uhas.
McInturf, that's right. McInturf, right.
Got it.
I'm here. Thank you.
All present, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the first item on the agenda. Paul, as usual, did an excellent job of the minutes from the April 20th meeting, and I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
This is
I
Tucker.
moved it. Go ahead, Sally.
I moved to approve.
Okay. And
Second. Sue, I second.
all right, so we have a motion from Sally to approve the minutes from the April 20th meeting, and it's been seconded by Sue. Paul, could you please take the roll?
Certainly. Tom Uhas.
Yes.
Sue.
Yes.
Myself. Yes. Sally.
Yes,
And Rich.
Yes. Next item on the agenda.
Motion.
I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yep. Motion passed. Yep.
Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, financial reports. First item is the cash flow statement for May. It was updated with claims that did not include the last claim that Karen sent this afternoon. I updated it, but I did not send it out again because I wanted to update it after our meeting today, and I will do so. And then Karen had also circulated the April financial statement. Karen, I had a question on that in terms of the MCDC payment. It was reflected as a payment of April 30th, but it wasn't on that statement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, I know you probably got a million emails, but
No, I'm just pulling it up. I'm sorry.
that's all right. That's fine.
So was it on the claims for this?
It was in the April claims, and it was on the list of April claims, but did not appear on the financial statement as a claim in April. And
Okay,
it was dated April 30th. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. We approved it. It's just a matter of timing on which report it belongs on. So,
I'll take a look and send it out to the commission.
Okay.
Again.
all right. So, would you prefer us to defer that then?
That's fine. I think you do need to approve the March report. Was that done last month?
I thought in the minutes it reflected it was, but
Oh, okay.
it may not. I did. Why don't we pass the financial reports at this time, and we'll take a look at the minutes before we end the meeting and see what we need to approve.
That's fine.
Okay. Claims. Karen circulated the claims for today, and again, our process is that we'll approve them here, and Karen will reserve the signature page. I will sign them as the president of the council, and then if we ever return to normal, everybody else can put their John Hancock on it, or Joan Hancock. So, any question about the claims? did people have a chance to review them or?
Yes, I did. I'm good.
Okay. If there are no questions, can we get a motion to approve the claims as presented?
This is Stu. I'll make a motion to approve the claims as presented.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. So Sue has made a motion to approve the claims. Tom has seconded it. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll move to the question. Paul, could you take the roll, please?
Certainly, I'll go alphabetically this time by last name. Myself, I. The next is Sue.
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Tom.
Yes. Aye.
Motion is passed.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda.
Rich, just, I took a look at the financial, the minutes
Yes,
from April, and what we had in there was a draft March financial statement was shared with CRC members. The information will be finalized for the CRC meeting in May. The April 2020 cash flow statement was shared with the CRC members. So we didn't approve anything at that point.
okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the March financial report?
This is Sally. I'll take motion to approve the March financial.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made by Sally to approve the March
And this
2020.
is Paul. I'll second it.
Paul has seconded it. All those in favor, Paul, could you take the roll, please?
Certainly. Switch it up again. Rich,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Paul, yes. Sue,
Yes.
Tom.
Aye.
Okay. It has been approved. All ayes.
Good. Next, there were two items added to the agenda. Karen brought up the fact that, or reminded me of the fact that every year we have to issue a letter to the overlapping taxing bodies, indicating if we have any, I'm not sure if I'll phrase this correctly, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but any excess revenues that we don't meet
No.
our commits.
It's
No?
excess assessed value.
Okay. All right. So if there's any excess assessed value,
Correct.
okay. So does anyone believe we have any excess assessed value in our TIF districts?
No, this is Sue. I don't believe we have any excess assessed value.
Okay.
Do you want me to make a motion then, or?
I was going to ask Karen, is a motion to authorize you to issue that letter, or the motion that we don't believe we do, and then you issue the letter based on that?
I would say the latter, that you don't have excess value, and that I can go ahead and issue the letter and authorize you as council or CRC president to sign.
Okay. And Sue, I assume that was your motion?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, the motion's been made by Sue and seconded by Tom. However you're going to mix it up, Paul?
All right. Tom,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
and Paul. Aye. All ayes.
Okay, thank you. The last item under the financial reports is the TIF neutralization report. And Karen said that this is not due until the end of July, but typically we engage, it used to be Amboa, now it's Baker Tilly, to review the assessed values and in the TIF districts. And then they issue a finding or statement that then we file with the state. Is that pretty close to being correct, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think as far as I know, we have not received a proposal from them yet this year, but since our next meeting is not until mid-June, typically, I want to say was it $1,500 or $1,800, Karen?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I can, if you give me a couple minutes, I can probably locate it.
Yeah, I tried to find the proposal from last year. I didn't see one last year. There was one from 2018 that I
Yeah,
found.
last year's was tied into their invoice for the presentation that you had at your June meeting.
Right. Okay. But is the commission all right with our proceeding to engage Baker Tilly to do the TIF neutralization review?
This is Sally, and I would like to make a motion that we hire or employ Baker Tilly to do the neutralization assessment for the TIF.
Okay. So we put a cap on it. What do we just say? So it's under $2,000. Okay, so that's motion
Fine.
been made. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So a motion been made and seconded to authorize Baker Tilly to do a TIF neutralization assessment with a professional fee not to exceed $2,000. Paul, could you take the roll, please?
Certainly. Tom,
Aye.
Rich,
Yeah, aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Sally, and myself. All ayes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, town manager's report, Jonathan?
Jonathan's on mute.
There we go. Not a lot of change from last month. Beach Lodge is substantially complete, but still waiting on landscaping. We still hold all the retainage for that, but looking to really get things wrapped up. And then to our ribbon cutting, we've rescheduled for Saturday, June 20th at 9 a.m. So if any of the commission members would like to join us, we'd like to have you there. Help cut the ribbon on that. Cavalier Park, again, no major updates. Last I spoke with Mike Reese from Troyer, sounded like they were still hoping to really have things substantially complete by around June 1st. When I've been by, it still looks pretty similar. I think they still got some trail work to do, some groundwork to do, and finishing up the playground equipment, as well as the addition to the parking lot. So looked like there was still a fair amount of work to do there. But again, as I last spoke with him, he was they're shooting for June 1st. On all the NDOT projects, I mean, they've all moved into the final phase of engineering. The Lake Max Trail on Main Street is the only one that requires some property acquisition. So we just completed an agreement for that to get started on that. I think there's 10 parcels that will have a few feet along the road, basically, that we'll have to acquire to be able to put the trail in that area. So that one, that'll be the stage we're working on there. The rest are just kind of wrapping up engineering, and we'll see construction start next year. I think that's all our original Stellar projects.
Any questions for Jonathan on the town stellar projects, or do you want to roll into the brief description of the county ones since we talked about that at the earlier?
Yeah, I
point?
was gonna say, I covered that in pretty far in depth earlier. I don't know. It's a park project that we talked about, and the next phase of trail, which you guys or commission members were all there for, decided to support with the local match. So I will get that letter in. We'll get our application in with NDOT and anticipate, moving into the engineering phase with a scheduled construction probably for 2024 or 2025.
Okay, good. Any questions for Jonathan? Right, moving on the agenda, I have Jerry, are you on the call? Jerry Chavez or Greg Hildebrand?
Yes.
Jerry?
Both of us on the call.
Both of us.
Okay, you're scheduled, and I know we got a copy of the progress report this afternoon from Greg. Would one of you like to provide a summary of that progress report, please? This is for the report on the deliverables in our contracted agreement with MCDC.
Yeah, I'll let Greg go ahead and cover that. Thank you very much, Rich.
Okay.
Okay. And like you said, everybody got a copy of it. I think pretty easy to make heads or tails of. The couple items I want to point out is on the microloan program. While we did have a restaurant that had taken out an application due to COVID-19, they weren't interested in any additional debt at this time. Couple high points on that is that we've now started using the LIBOR interest rates. This is going to cut the interest down to about 1 to 1.5% for anybody who wants to take advantage of that program. We also have the ability to defer payments for 180 days on a case-by-case basis for that. I think you can read there the different press releases that we've put out the last several months on different items there. We contacted with Paul and Jonathan about the NIPSCO project. You can see that in there. And then probably the biggest part of the report there has some of the other items that we've been busy with. A lot of those you'll see pertain to Culver, and then a lot of them also pertain to just business in general in Marshall County. If you have any questions, I can address a particular part of the report.
Rich, do you want me to run through everybody's names so them to ask questions, or just ask questions as they'd like? Rich?
Rich, you're muted.
So
you're reading my lips, right, Jonathan?
Okay.
Yes.
I'll have to be more careful then about what I say. So any questions from any members of the commission?
And we are also busy. I know we've had some discussions with Rich and Jonathan about the business recruitment plan. We're probably approximately halfway through in our meetings. We've got another one scheduled here in a couple of weeks, but so far we've talked about what are the assets that Culver has to offer, what are some of the incentives they may have to offer, and then we'll also be talking more into what marketing strategies they want to take on.
Okay. Sally, any questions for Greg or Jerry?
I don't have any. Thank you.
Sue?
No.
Tom? Or Paul?
Greg, the draft plan that you're working on, I think we're supposed to see a copy of that by the middle of June, so we can take a look through and you finalize it on the 15th. Are you on track with that?
Yes, we are. Yeah, that's what we've been working on. We're compiling that draft plan as we go. We've probably worked about, I'd say, almost 3/4 of the way through our development of that.
And Rich, are you comfortable that they're getting the essence of who we are in this as we're going along?
I think it is a process that we're working through, and I think we've had 2 meetings so far, and as Greg said, we have a 3rd one set up. I think we're making progress would be my assessment.
Okay.
And Rich, this is Jerry, just real quick. Paul, thank you for asking the question. As well, in the discussions, you should see the next, for the last meeting notes from Greg. Those are made to not only commission members, but also council as well. We want your feedback as we go through that process.
Is there a format that you want our feedback? It just, with us being as dispersed as we are under this COVID condition, if you're looking for feedback,
Yeah, Paul, this is Jerry again. We sent the notes out that covers the discussion. We make those available. If you have comments or you feel that a topic isn't covered or is missing an item, we want you to go ahead and just share your comments with Greg. Greg will compile all the information.
In my case, you probably need to resend the notes because I don't have them.
Okay.
I will see that they get forwarded to you, Paul.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions for Greg or Jerry, or Greg or Jerry, anything else to add?
Just very briefly, I just wanted to comment. I wanted to thank Paul for the tracking of the information. I thought it was very good format to just keep everybody on the same page. So thanks again, Paul, for doing that, and thanks for answering some of our questions.
Oh, my pleasure, and it'll help as we go forward. I realize you're just starting this. The ability to get this a couple days beforehand will probably help us all have better conversations. So I know Rich usually sends out everything or tries to send out everything the Friday before our CRC meeting. So if you guys, Greg, if you could kind of line your schedule that way so we see it then, that'll help us all.
Okay, sure.
All right, good, thank you. If there's nothing else on MCDC, moving on to the next item on the agenda. Tracy, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
So this is for the CRC and the Develop Culver economic development plan proposal, and then also on the we'll do the economic development plan proposal first.
Sure, happy to. This is really just more of a discussion point. We're not requesting any funding or anything. It's more of requesting the opportunity to collaborate with CRC and kind of what we're sort of describing very basically as a plan for a plan, kind of given COVID, given some of the feedback that we've gotten, and also just some of the reality that we've seen in Culver, which is not unlike beyond in terms of the impact of COVID. We think it's a really good opportunity to collaborate with CRC on a plan to develop kind of a COVID-19, post-COVID-19 economic development plan, knowing that post-COVID-19 is not going to be anything like pre-COVID-19 in terms of the economic environment, our business community, the trends that we're seeing in place during the shutdown and other restrictions are likely, many of them, to continue. So we really want to take an opportunity to rethink and re-envision how Culver can come out of this stronger, knowing that some of the economic trends are going to be a long time in the works, and also just some of the trends that we're seeing are going to be permanent. So how do we really rethink how we've kind of done business in the past? And so really the proposal per se is really just to begin the discussions with CRC to collaborate on really thinking about how best to pursue a really good, strong, comprehensive economic development plan that takes into consideration our businesses, who Culver is, what we are, what we generally do, and how things have changed with COVID. So that's kind of it. I know, Rich, we've talked about this as part of Develop Culver, and I don't know if Danielle's on, if there's any other discussion, one of the things we did think we could do initially was to work with CRC in creating some kind of a survey or some way to get input from obviously CRC leaders and other town leaders, town council, maybe get some input from some key businesses to kind of develop the very kind of beginning of some kind of a way to capture information that'll really help us determine how best to move forward. And also what types of, that'll also kind of feed our discussion in terms of what types of consultants or firms should be considered for the creation of this type of an economic development plan. So with that, I'll stop and see, Rich, if you have anything else to add, or if Danielle's on, if you have anything else to add.
I think it, no, I think that captures it.
I agree. I'm here, Tracy.
Oh, good.
I do have the 2 calls scheduled tomorrow with potential consultants that they're free through Indiana Main Street. They've offered resources to 2 different consultants that will give 30 minutes to an hour of free services. So I think that's probably a good start. I think Rich is going to be on both of those calls and Tracy will be on one of them. So
yeah, and I think just
experts had to say.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think to clarify that, those calls will really be as part of the CRC DC kind of the project that we got approved from CRC, the $7,500 regarding the kind of what we're calling a navigator, but not really calling it as much of that anymore. But that's kind of part of that phase of the project. What I just talked about in terms of the economic development plan is really, like I said, we're not requesting any funding at this point. We really are just requesting the opportunity to collaborate with CRC to really figure out what would it take to develop a more comprehensive one that recognizes how things have changed. But I do agree, Danielle, those discussions tomorrow would help us even in thinking, kind of beyond this initial helping the businesses step.
Well, and it's also part of the, and I know it's early on in that, but it's identifying, again, potential resources for the longer term, not just the immediate situation. So,
yes.
Other questions from members of the commission?
Yeah, this is Paul. I thought we approved a 2-year process to do this exact thing, that our partnership program that we approved in March has the same process laid out. COVID is just the reality that's part of it, but I'm a little confused because I thought
think
that's what you guys were going to do.
I think in March, we made 2 concrete decisions related to this. One is funding of the online purchasing, and Danielle will talk about that in a minute, and Tracy will also talk about the navigation piece in a minute. Those are two concrete commitments that we made. I think conceptually, we agreed that a partnership to develop a plan with the Main Street group or Develop Culver made sense, but it needs to be fleshed out, and it needs more concrete information. And I think what Tracy's saying is that, back in February, we knew COVID was here. The impact of it, I think, has been broader and more devastating than any of us probably would have thought at that point. And the landscape is much different. And so, I think looking for a resource that can help us move forward is still, that's the plan at this point. But we have not found a resource for that, or Develop Culver has not found a resource for that. We're continuing to work on it. And as Danielle and Tracy said, we've got calls with 2 consultants. We don't know that they'll be the long-term ones for developing the plan, but may be able to help more in short term.
Right, but that's part of what we even said back in March when we decided to do this. I mean, I agree. And COVID has just become a part of the reality, just as e-commerce has and so many other things. But this thing laid out all the things that you're talking about, the SWOT analysis, the surveys. The Navigator was a short-term thing that we were looking to do to help people through with funding, and the other online development for the businesses was a short interim thing. But I mean, all the stuff that you're talking about is exactly what you've got in there, and we would give you the funds to get started on it. Because I even remember you guys saying if you didn't have the resources, you would go and find them, and we funded this so you could do that. I think this is a critical point for us, and I just think that's why we did this contract.
I guess the $7,500 contract, Paul, if you recall, and I'm sure you do, we came in initially with obviously a bigger price tag, and then with a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth to kind of talk about how best to kind of jumpstart and get something out the door. The $7,500 was what was approved to engage with businesses specifically to identify the areas where they need assistance. We've done some of that already in terms of the monthly calls, and we also identified that there was the Small Business Resource Center that provided some of those resources for free. You also lined up some really good discussions with Tim Rice for the businesses to have. So we entered it not knowing exactly what we would need. I guess the $7,500 is continuing to be used, but that's more, I view that more, and I think we all do, as specific to businesses who are willing to take advantage of rethinking what their business model is going to be and setting them up and connecting them with somebody, or some firm or whatever can do that service. What we're talking about now in terms of the larger economic development plan is not going to be accomplished in $7,500. And so I think that's where we're thinking of the collaboration with you all to figure out what the next step is. And you're right. I do think some of the pieces that we're working on now are going to feed into our knowledge about how best to set up that economic development plan. But I think, and so they're not exclusive of each other. We will benefit from what we do in the short-term phase with the 7,500.
Okay, I appreciate you explaining it to me that way. I don't see it that way in several points, and maybe this will help clarification. The two COVID things were pretty finite. One was help to use small business funding, navigators if appropriate, and we approved that. And the other was for getting those places in town that could be put online to get their sales, to get them up and through in the near term to help their sales. And they were pretty finite. I know we'd set a target of getting organizations up and running on the online thing by May 2nd, and the Navigator was really focused on the PPP coming out. But this, and they, if the Navigator thing has been overcome by events, that's fine. But the other developed Culver proposal that we approved has all these other things that you're talking about in it, and it gives you the funds right up front as soon as we execute this agreement, that you can go do the things that you need to do in all these surveys. And so I just see us as needing to do the comprehensive plan and process that was proposed and approved in March, and not any of the other side projects, but jumping into it this way. The process you have laid out is exactly what needs to happen. And I would rather see us just go and execute this, get it going, get the timelines going, and get this partnership working. I don't see extending my personal view. I don't see extending this the Navigator program. I think that's gone by the wayside. It was a nice try, great. Things are very fluid. Let's move on, because there are other needs, and that's part of your surveying, and that's what you should be doing, and building this plan that we can execute to get us where we need to be. That's where I see this. I think we set money aside for you guys to do this. We believe in you, that we voted on this, and I think it's what we should get started on. That's my point of view.
Yeah, I guess maybe clarify for me, because I know what was voted on was the initial funding for the website and then the 7,500 for the navigator. And I guess what we're saying in terms of the navigator is we're still going to pursue that. That's the calls that we have tomorrow, and that's where we hope to help small businesses who are interested. We can't force small businesses who aren't interested in taking, advantage of the service to take advantage of the service.
Right.
But and we're obviously not even going to, CRC is not going to see any invoices that are, it's not going to be like, oh, here's your $7,500 invoice. If
But
not many services or businesses take care of it, I don't recall the approval of a concept, yes, but not of any other.
I'm looking at
we
the minutes.
approved,
I'm looking at the
we
minutes.
approved it in March. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I'm reading the minutes from the March 16th. And I will skip the first part of it because it details some of the discussion that we had concerning the language. And let's see, a motion was made by Ms. McInturf and seconded by Ms. Riccardi that the CRC approve the concept of a contracting with Culver to develop and implement a plan that is detailed in in this proposal. It was voted affirmed by myself, Sally, and Sue.
Paul voted against it.
And Paul and Tom voted against it. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And did we approve you to sign it? I thought we approved you to sign it with changes because there were 2 changes that needed to be made in it.
I don't think that was the motion, Paul, and that's what I guess that's what
Okay,
I think.
Then if I'm maybe misunderstanding. I thought that we had an agreement that you were going to execute. Is this proposal been withdrawn and we're stepping back?
No, this is Danielle. Can I just interject for one quick second? I think we ultimately said there were some precursors that needed to take place before we kicked off that contract, before it was signed. And then there was a time within X amount of time of the contract being signed, there was something that we needed to deliver. And about that time is when COVID hit. And so we never got to anything that would be signed or would be circled back around, if I'm remembering correctly. And there's been a lot on my plate, so I could definitely be wrong. But that's what I'm thinking, that there was a time piece put with it. So we weren't going to sign until we had that thing. So there were still, from what I remember, there was not a concrete.
I think the concept is something that I think there was consensus on, but I think there were a lot of questions that were raised, and there were not answers to those specific questions. The detail of the deliverable and the contract itself were not defined, and I think that's sort of why we said, okay, we agree with the concept, but let's flesh this thing out. We did not commit any dollars to it, according to the motion that is reflected in our minutes, and at least is my recollection. And I would agree with Danielle. I think what happened is the urgency of the other 2 initiatives have been what have consumed an inordinate amount of time in the interim. So
basically,
Okay.
we're getting back around to the 2, trying to work out the details, right?
I would say that's a concise analysis of what
Yes.
we're at right now.
So we don't have something that's a 2-year agreement that was ready to be signed. That was just a concept, and now that's been pulled back.
Well, the concept hasn't been pulled back. They're just now getting back to working on the details. So it can be proposed again.
Okay. All right.
But not tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, so I would feel more comfortable personally if you're changing the navigator program and it's morphing its main focus. since we approved it for a certain type of focus, that if there's something else that you need to do, and then you're bringing it to us for funding, that you drop one and do the other. I just look at things that way. Changing. That's where I'm.
Why don't we get those two reports first, Paul, and then we can react to the two progress reports.
Okay.
So, do
you mean, Rich, that we have the two calls tomorrow to see?
No,
Just to navigate, but okay.
So the two
clearly,
progress.
I'm taking up a lot of time here thinking that we had a 2-year agreement that was about to be executed, and I realize now it's not the case. It's just the concept that got approved as a concept, and now Develop Culver is going to go back, and you guys, Rich, you guys that are on that will work on it and come back with and Tracy will bring back a new proposal. Is that a fair assessment? Correct? I just want to understand it, that they'll bring back a new proposal.
Are you saying, Paul, are you saying a new proposal for the 2-year concept?
Yeah, or I am. Or is that
yeah, I guess
concept that you?
No, I mean, I think Sue's right. I think we definitely would like to pursue that. I guess one of the things that we thought about and what we really wanted to work with CRC on is let's work a little bit more. Let's work together on perhaps that concept as and maybe it is a survey first, because honestly, I don't think any of us want to come back in with a concept that that hasn't been a collaborative process. So I think that's really where I think, kind of our intention tonight was just to say, let's see if there are some steps we can take together to, not necessarily ensure, because nothing's insured, but to at least pave the way for a concept that we hope will, get us where we need to be and what we want. But before we put pen to paper again, can we identify, some opportunities to work together on fleshing that out a little bit? That's sort of where I am. That's how I generally like to work, and I continue to hope that that's something we can do.
Okay, and you okay? I understand where you're coming from now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. If we can move on to, there are two progress reports. Danielle, do you want to handle the one on the online shopping?
Yes, I can do that.
Just briefly summarize or update where things are at with that, and maybe Tina's involvement in the call on Friday.
Sure. So we have Culver Coffee online, and we have Frida's is online. One of the things that we're running into is right at the time that Frida's was getting back on, their business was they were getting their online website finished, their business opened back up. So we're finding that maybe they need a little more help in getting that running. They may need a little more hand holding just to get that done. So we're considering that how to go about that this week. Legacy is almost online. I think the same thing happened. Angie was maybe a little back and forth about the online, and then was ready to move forward, and then had to start prepping toward opening doors, and so Tina's kind of waiting on the final call to let Angie know how she goes about things. So it's just moving a little slower because the businesses are open. We also have, I'm thinking, we have at least 2 more inquiries for additional businesses. Paul had mentioned when we first did this that he thought this is something that should be open to all Culver businesses. And as Develop Culver, we chose to start with the businesses that are within Develop Culver's geographic region first. And we are, at a point that we could consider going beyond that geographic region and offering this to others. There's still a lot of hesitation with our businesses. They're small business owners. They're not used to being online. They're terrified of losing customer service or whatever. So parts of this have been a slower process than I would like, just because of that hesitation from the business owners. But we are making progress. So
I think also associated with that, I think that Tina, who's a consultant with those website developments, is also helping some of either the reluctant people or the people who have either not as much social media experience, but how to connect their websites with their Facebook posts and with emails and with other things to capture data. So I think in the call Friday, there was some good feedback and information provided on that.
Yeah, she worked one-on-one. Civies, for instance, already had an online store, but they weren't. I don't know. She helped them with marketing and how to connect it and how to market that online store better. I don't want to say that they weren't using it, or that I would have to let Civi speak for that, but she was able to help them streamline and make some processes with their online store more effective. And something that I talked to her about in the future was whether she would be willing to do an hour webinar with Culver businesses along those same lines, and maybe the businesses that are hesitant to get online would at least dip their toes in the online world just a little bit, so that it's more comfortable to go all the way online. And one of the things on last Friday's call is that we just don't know. Like, this is not, we're open right now. But I think we're all putting one foot in front of the other daily and trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves. So.
Questions for Danielle on the online project? Okay. Tracy, do you feel, and does the commission feel that we've covered the progress report on the navigation piece, or is there more?
I think we've covered it. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Tracy or Danielle or about this? It obviously still is a work in progress, but I think it's I think the work that's been done so far has been appreciated by the businesses, and I think it has been helpful to them, which I think is our objective. So moving on, next item on the agenda, is everybody fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I circulated a memo to CRC. This is a follow-up to a discussion we started at our last meeting concerning project funding. Just briefly, as we know, the town jumped in and very quickly did a grant program for the small businesses in Culver. It was meant as an interim step to get them funding until some of the federal funding projects could figure out who's on first and what they were doing. We had, I believe, 21 or 22 local businesses applied, and grants were issued for $138,000. The town found funding for that in various funds that it had, and had some discussion, or would like CDRC to discuss, are there ways that we might be able to help provide some of the funding for that project. We've had the discussion about the bonds, and I won't go over that. I think it's the startup costs for the bonds are too expensive for probably what we'd be looking at, and they take too long at this point in time. But the project the town put together in terms of the grant program is certainly economic development. It's supporting our local business community that in turn supports, and the value of those properties in the TIF are what fund our TIF dollars that we're able to use for economic development and supporting other projects that we support. Unfortunately, they can't be used in a grant program such as the town did. But what we can do is we can legitimately share expenses on some projects. We just talked in the joint meeting earlier about the phase 3 of the Trails project, and CRC has taken on the matching funding there. Earlier, we had a project, or it's still ongoing now, for the water, sewer, and paving of South Main Street. Again, it's in a TIF area. It's a business. It's extending utilities to future development at the south end of town. The matching dollars for that program were, I don't have the numbers in front of me, was it $370,000 total?
I've got it here. Yeah, it's 340,000.
That was the town match.
Project. Yeah.
Right. So the town match was $340,000. CRC previously had committed to funding $105,000 of that. And I would suggest equitably that that CRC should consider funding half of that project to the tune of $170,000 as opposed to $105,000. Therefore, adding $65,000 to our commitment to the project. And then also on the contract with MCEDC, it's for $10,000. It's a similar contract to the contract that CRC has with MCEDC. I would suggest that we might consider the town funding, CRC funding the town's portion, or the town's contract with MCEDC. Both of those are projects that are within the scope of what we were permitted to do. They're economic development, they're funding utility infrastructure issues in TIF and future TIF areas. And I think it would help the town in the program that they took on sort of on our behalf, since we couldn't do it. So that's, at our last meeting, I said I would come back with some specifics and some data and some information. Like I circulated this Friday, so hopefully people had a chance to digest it. So questions, comments?
Hey, Jonathan, will the town be able to put this back into like their version of a rainy day fund? How would, I know funds are fungible and they move around in an organization. If we're able to do this, how do you think the town might use it?
I'll maybe pass most of that off to Karen. Karen Heim, do you mind answering that one?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Really, if we're able to give a form of relief to the town by contributing $75,000 and or putting the funds into what Rich is talking about, I'm just curious how the town might use it. Does it go into the rainy day fund? Is it something, it's a good idea. I just want to understand how you might use it. That's all.
Right. Well, I guess my assumption would be, I guess it could work two ways. One, it could be, we would have an interlocal agreement that you would pay the town back, kind of like we have with the water utility fund, where every year CRC contributes $30,000. It goes back into the water fund to help defray costs of the water tanks.
I'm not looking, I'm not looking for a trail on this. I'm just, if we do this and pass something, does that just go into the general fund? I just want to make sure.
I guess I have to understand how you guys want it set up.
To make it as simple as possible, what I would suggest is if we change our contribution on those projects that I mentioned in the memo here, it's simply, then the town doesn't have to pay for those in the future. So the South Main Street project, the town has committed, we have 105,000 on the table. The town has the balance of the 235 or whatever it is. So in the future, the town doesn't have to pay. They have to pay $75,000 less than they're currently committed to pay. So wherever Karen would take those dollars from in the future, they would not need to come out of that fund to do that.
Yeah, and I guess to follow up, since we haven't done that yet, we haven't had to pay for that yet, Paul. But our plan, I guess, that we had tentatively talked about was that we would do an additional appropriation at the end of the year, and those funds would essentially come out of our, it's not a separate rainy day fund, it's just our operating balance. We try to carry, anywhere from 6 months to 18 months worth of an operating balance. And we did not budget for that COVID-19 grant program at the beginning of the year, obviously. So when we looked at different funds to kind of take it from, after discussion with Karen and then Rich and Jenny and I, we just decided that we thought the simplest and most direct thing to do was really just, we had a healthy balance there in our operating fund, that we would use that, and at the end of the year we'd make an additional appropriation so that we would have permission to spend that we didn't budget.
Okay.
And so if you guys would do this, then we would be able to reduce the amount, or maybe not have to do an additional appropriation depending on how other things go. Most likely we'll still have to do an additional appropriation for 75,000 or something in that range.
That helps me understand. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for the question. Other questions, comments?
Rich, my thoughts on this is I think I'm okay with the sewer part of it, since that is in our wheelhouse, that is in part of our TIF district. So to fund the additional 65,000, which gives us then 50% of the program, I'm okay with that one.
Okay.
For some reason, the MCEDC giving the additional 10 just kind of gets in my crawl, because we cut back this year specifically because we felt the deliverables were cut back this year compared to what we've had in the past, and now all of a sudden we're back up to paying the entire amount again, or giving 20,000 where last year we had given 20 and then we cut it back to 10, or if it was 15. I know we've cut back this year, so I have a problem with the MCEDC one, but I'm okay with the sewer one.
Okay. Just the information, Karen or Jonathan, do you recall in 2019, I know, I'm pretty sure Tom was correct that CRC had a contract for 20. Did the town also have a contract for 10 in 2019? Or it was part of the same contract, but what did the town pay MCDC?
Yeah, I believe the towns has always stayed steady at 10,000, if I remember correctly, the last few years.
That's kind of my recollection too.
Yeah.
So last year, MCDC combined got 30 from us. This year they're getting 20 combined.
That sounds right.
And I understand and appreciate what you're saying, Tom. We did separate the contracts, and the town as a separate deliverable contract. But I thought it was, at least on paper, it was something that we could fund. It was within, economic development. So, but I understand what you're saying. Others, Sally, Sue?
I'm kind of in the same line with Tom. I'd rather not give the MCDC any more money. But the South Main Street project, I'm good with.
Okay. Sally, thoughts, comments?
I'm good with the street project, sewer project. And maybe we could go up another 5,000 on that, and not do the 5 or 10,000, and not do the MCEDC.
There's a Solomon-like suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tom, how does that?
Do it 65, do 75 additional.
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that avenue. I didn't know if we had was 50% the max, that there's no limits on this.
I don't think so. I mean, I think we could fund the whole thing if we wanted. I'm not suggesting that. Um, but, yeah, I don't think there's a max on the match.
I think we could fund, as you say, the whole thing if we wish to, but I think 75,000 additional would be, a good start.
Okay. How does that sit, Sue, Paul, Tom? What do you think on that?
I'm not as upset about where it comes from, but the number still works, so I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
All right. So, Sally, if I would take that as a motion then that you have moved that the the Redevelopment Commission increase our matching funds for the South Main Street water sewer project to $180,000. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay, so that's a motion that's been made. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it. This is Sue.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
Okay.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion or question?
And Rich, just for clarity, the motion is that CRC increases its matching funds for the South Main Street water and sewer project to $180,000.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Currently, it's at 105.
Right.
Correct.
So it's an increase of 75K.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so is the motion clear? Any further discussion? If not, Paul, could you take the roll in whatever form
Certainly.
you'd like, order you'd like?
I'll just, I'll go alphabetically, last name first, first name last. Paul, aye.
Go
Sue,
ahead.
Aye.
Whose alphabet are you using?
I'm using last names.
Oh, okay.
When you're the secretary, you can do whatever you want. Sally,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
and Tom.
I'm always last.
Better
First if I go backwards. First if I go first. So, Mr. President, the motion is passed.
Okay. Thank you all for your actions and for your humor. New business, facade grants. Tom, updates. I sent you something from Brandy very late this afternoon.
Yeah, I just looked at it right before we had the joint meeting, and I mean, I haven't seen it. I haven't compared the numbers. I mean, I don't have anything on it, and
Yep.
so I guess at this point we'll just have that on the agenda for next month, or do we want to?
That's fine with me. I very quickly opened the document. It was a copy of the invoice that was stamped paid, and I think the amount was $52,600. I do not recall what we approved, and so I think, to give us time to fairly evaluate it, I would say we put it on the agenda for next month, unless somebody has an objection to that. Okay, hearing none, I think that's what we will do. Any other, did you received anything else on facades, Tom?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. And no updated information from Bob Noack?
No.
Okay. All right. I think that gets us to the end of our agenda. Are there any other new business? Sally?
I have none.
No. Sue?
No.
Tom, so you're not last?
Well, then who's going to be last? You?
I'd like to get the last word. With you sometimes, that would be good.
You always get the last word. I don't have anything further.
Okay. Paul?
Nothing further.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Don't forget Karen. She can talk about this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you don't vote. Okay. Karen?
That's quite
I'm
all
sorry.
right, Rich. I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Any comments or questions from any of the public or Jonathan or Karen Heim?
Rich, in answer to the question on the MCDC invoice that you were wondering about, that the check date that you're referring to isn't the check date, it's actually the invoice date. The check date will be tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. Fine. Then if we can return to the financial statements, Karen had circulated the financial statement for April. The question that arose on that has been answered. So can we entertain a motion to approve that so we don't get behind again? So approving the April financial statement for CRC.
This is Paul. I make a motion to approve the April CRC financial statement.
Okay, second.
Sally is second.
Okay, so Paul has made the motion and Sally has seconded to approve the April of 2020 financial statement for the Redevelopment Commission. Paul, could you take the roll, please?
I'll do discussion first, Rich.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom.
So have we not approved March?
We just approved the March report today.
We approved that earlier, Tom. But we passed on April because I had a question about.
Oh, okay, all right. I wasn't sure which, I thought we approved. Okay. All right, I thought we had come around that March hadn't, there was still something missing from March. Okay. I'm good.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. So Paul, could you take the roll, please?
sure. Tom,
Yes, I approve.
Sue,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
I do, and Rich,
Yes,
all approved.
thank you. Any other new business or items from any members of the commission? If not, our next meeting is June
15th.
at 5 p.m. And I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, so Sue moved, Tom seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Oops, sorry.
You anxious to go
Sue?
someplace? What do you-
Oh,
No,
that's right.
I all these calls.
Yeah. So Sue said aye. Tom,
Aye.
Paul says aye. Sally,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
and Karen, we know you do. Okay, all approved.
All right, thank you very much for your time, your dedication to duty, and stay safe.
Right.
And how many more days of e-learning, Karen?
This is the last week, guys. Thursday's the last day.
I know. Who's counting? Jonathan.
Thank God, right? Oh, man.
Hey, now you just appreciate all of us and send all your kids and your
Oh.
neighbors' kids and any kid you find on the street to us next school year.
Okay.
We don't, I don't, let's not even open that door. Okay. All right, thank you
Good
all.
night, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.